Here are the most horrifying teen inmates you don't want to meet. Number 10. Alyssa Bustamante. At the age of 8, Alyssa Bustamante was taken in by her grandparents along with her 3 younger siblings. Alyssa's father was incarcerated and her mother suffered with addiction and couldn't take care of her children. Alyssa had a difficult childhood, but around 2007, at the age of 13, friends started to notice a change in Alyssa's behavior. She had been hospitalized for a self-slaughter attempt and was clearly suffering from severe depression and would later be tentatively diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. By the age of 15, Alyssa was now more fascinated with taking another life than with taking her own, and began to plan a heinous murder. She dug 2 pits in a forest near her home, and then got her younger sister to lure out young Elizabeth Olton to play. Once Alyssa was alone with Elizabeth, she attacked her with a belt and then a knife. After the murder was over, Alyssa threw the body in the pit and covered it with leaves. She then went home and wrote in her diary that it was amazing, and that she enjoyed the feeling before going to a church dance while the police searched for her victim. Alyssa was arrested and sentenced to life in prison with a possibility of conditional release and a consecutive sentence of 30 years. Her earliest possible release will be in 2054 at the age of 60. Number 9. Erin Caffey. Erin Caffey was 16 when she started dating 19-year-old Charlie Wilkinson. Erin's parents had serious reservations over her dating Charlie, but they decided to let the relationship fizzle on its own. However, soon they found on Erin's MySpace page posts relating to her taking substances and engaging in indecent acts. Her parents pulled her aside and chastised her, saying they didn't raise her this way and she was going down a bad path. They thought that was the end of it. 2 days later, in the dead of night, Charlie and 2 adult accomplices would arrive at the house. Erin came out and let them in before hiding in the car. Charlie and his accomplices proceeded to murder Erin's mother and 2 younger brothers before setting fire to the house to hide their evidence. Erin's father was shot a dozen times, but managed to crawl out of the burning inferno and to the neighbors, who called the police. Erin and all her accomplices were caught and arrested that same day. Erin pled guilty and was sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences plus 25 years. She'll be ineligible to appeal until 40 years of her sentence has been served. Number 8. Craig Price. A month before his 16th birthday, Craig Price was arrested for some of the most violent and vicious murders in Rhode Island history. From the ages of 13 to 15, Craig Price had taken the lives of 4 people. First, at the age of 13, Craig broke into a house 2 doors down from his own and attacked 27-year-old Rebecca Spencer. Spencer was stabbed 58 times by one of her own kitchen knives, and just over 2 years later, Price would, while intoxicated on lysergic acid and tetrahydrocannabinol, take the life of 39-year-old Joan Heaton along with her 2 daughters. The murders were so violent that the handle of the murder weapon broke, leaving it lodged inside one victim. Price had an existing record for petty theft, and when he was arrested, confessed all 4 of his murders calmly and without remorse. Price was convicted as a minor, and so by Rhode Island state law would be released at 21 and have his record sealed. Upon hearing this, Price bragged that he would make history upon his release. His case actually led to the introduction of lifetime sentences for juveniles for sufficiently violent crimes, but the ruling could not be retroactively changed. Thankfully for the public, though not for those he is incarcerated with, Price has a history of violence against other inmates and against guards, and his sentence has been extended another 30 years for violence committed while inside. Psychologists state that he is a poor candidate for rehabilitation. Number 7. Nehemiah Grigo. Nehemiah at 15 was an angry and sullen person. He had both homicidal and self-destructive thoughts and had been planning his actions for quite some time by the time of his multi-murder. Around midnight, Nehemiah took a .22 caliber weapon and shot his mother before going upstairs to his younger brother Zephaniah's room. There, he told his brother what he had done. However, Zephaniah refused to believe him until Nehemiah showed him a photo of what he had done. Nehemiah then told him he was next before ending his life as well. He then went to his 2 sisters' rooms and ended their lives before sitting down on the couch and waiting for his father to return. At 5 a.m., his father returned from his shift at the homeless shelter to find his son armed at the door. Nehemiah ended his father's life as well before putting both weapons he had used in the trunk of his father's car. He then emailed his girlfriend a photo of his murdered mother and drove to church. His plan had been to continue his spree and meet his end in a shootout with police, but he was caught before he could get himself ready for more violence. Nehemiah was eventually sentenced to 3 concurrent life sentences plus 7 years. He must serve 30 years before he is eligible for parole. Number 6. Monique and Beau Mestas. Monique and Beau Mestas were siblings living in an RV park in Nevada. Monique was 16 and Beau was 19 when they decided to go to a dealer's RV to buy illicit substances made popular in the show Breaking Bad. They paid $125 for what they thought was a pure substance. However, when they got home, they realized it was just plain salt. Infuriated, the siblings grabbed large butcher's knives and went back to the RV. When they knocked on the door, Tamara Bergeron, the dealer, was not there. She was out with her boyfriend gambling. Only Tamara's two daughters, 10 and 3, were present, and they refused to open the door. Monique then claimed that Tamara was severely hurt and she needed her daughters, which got the eldest, Brittany, to open the door. Monique and Beau attacked immediately without warning or restraint. They then fled the scene and changed from their heavily bloodied clothes, though that wouldn't help them hide from police. The eldest daughter, Brittany, survived but was left paralyzed while the youngest passed in moments. During the trial, it was revealed that Beau and Monique had a violent and abusive upbringing with their father Henry, who was a twice convicted murderer. Beau would be sentenced to death and Monique to 40 years imprisonment before eligibility for parole. Number 5. Tyler Hadley. During his teen years, Tyler began skipping school and participating in the taking of hard substances. He had a criminal record for substance use, dealing, purchasing, arson, vandalism, petty theft, and aggravated battery, wherein he had hit and injured a young person with his father's car. Tyler was enrolled in an outpatient drug treatment program, which was ineffective as he had no desire to stop using substances. Tyler's parents decided to enroll him in an inpatient program that would require Tyler to stay in the facility during his treatment. Infuriated and enraged, Tyler began planning the murder of his parents so he wouldn't have to attend the inpatient program. Tyler took 3 pills before attacking his mother with the back end of a claw hammer while she worked. Hearing the commotion, Tyler's father came downstairs and stopped in shock at what he saw. Tyler leapt on him and took his life as well. Tyler then spent 3 hours moving the bodies to his parents' room and cleaning the blood before he announced on Facebook that he would be hosting a party at his house. During the party, he showed several friends the bodies and bragged openly about having committed the murders. One of the partygoers notified police and Tyler was soon arrested. Hadley was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Number 4. Rachel Wade. Rachel Wade, 18, had recently been in a relationship with Joshua Camacho. Rachel had a serious attachment issue with boys and would fall for any guy who spent time with her. Camacho was no exception, and though he was abusive, violent, and self-centered, Wade was obsessed with him. Camacho could care less and was soon dating Sarah Letterman. Instead of turning their anger on the man who was cheating on them both, Sarah and Rachel began a seriously toxic rivalry. They would harass and assault each other at any opportunity, leaving threatening voicemails and going to one another's work to scream profanities and threats at one another. Joshua had numerous girlfriends, many of whom had children, and all of whom he relied on to pay his way as he seldom had a job. One night, Wade finished work early and went to Camacho's house where he was with Ludeman. There, Camacho texted her that he was done with her and she should go home. Instead, Wade went to an ex's. Sarah Ludeman left Camacho's and while driving was told by a friend that Rachel Wade was at Wade's ex's house. Ludeman drove over to confront her and received a call on the way from Wade telling her that she would stab her if she saw her. Undeterred, Ludeman showed up and Wade immediately attacked her with a steak knife. Ludeman would die in hospital from a punctured lung and Wade would be sentenced to 27 years in prison for murder in the 2nd degree. Number 3. Amber Wright. Amber Wright, 15, was dating Seth Jackson, 15, and all seemed to be well for the first few months. Then it became clear to Seth's parents that she was manipulative and the relationship steadily became more toxic. The couple broke up when Seth discovered Amber's infidelity with 18-year-old Michael Bargo. This enraged Seth, and the three consistently made inflammatory comments and posts in person and over social media. At one point, Seth and Michael even physically fought, with Seth apparently winning the exchange. Things changed when Seth slept with the girlfriend of Amber's stepbrother. Amber, Michael, and her stepbrother Kyle then began to plot Seth's murder. Amber messaged Seth asking if they could meet up and talk about getting back together. However, when Seth showed up, he was attacked by nearly a dozen teens who dragged him inside and took dozens of minutes to viciously torment him to death. They then burned the evidence and were driven by an accomplice to a flooded quarry where Seth's remains were dumped. Kyle broke first, confessing to his mother while watching a news report of Seth's disappearance. Thanks to his admission, police were able to arrest all the involved parties relatively quickly. All were sentenced to life in prison except for Michael Bargo, who was sentenced to death. Number 2. Tyler Witt. Joanne Witt was a single mother living with her daughter Tyler. She was not a very good mother, but according to family, friends, tried her best. She briefly lost custody of Tyler for striking her, and the relationship was a contentious one. When Tyler was 14, she started dating 19-year-old Stephen Culver. When Culver was kicked out of his house and had to find new accommodations, Tyler suggested to her mother that he live in their basement with them. Joanne was initially hesitant, but was assured that Culver was gay and that Tyler's relationship with him was more like a brother and sister. Sometime later, Joanne walked in on the two engaged in indecent acts and kicked Culver out. Initially, she didn't seek charges on the basis that Tyler told her they would break up. However, they didn't, and Culver snuck into the house over 20 times without Joanne's knowledge. Eventually, upon finding Tyler's journal, which detailed the numerous crimes Stephen was guilty of, Joanne decided to go to the police. Later that day, she took Tyler out to dinner and told her the news. Tyler feigned indifference, but later connected with Stephen. The pair decided they would reenact Romeo and Juliet and flee before taking their lives. However, they had to take Joanne's life to keep her from following them. Tyler drugged Joanne heavily with sleeping medication before Stephen snuck in and ended her life with a knife. After 5 days on the run, the two were found and arrested. Before the trial, Tyler took a plea deal for second-degree murder and 15 years in prison. Culver was sentenced to life without parole. Number 1. Charles Starkweather. Born in Lincoln, Nebraska as the third of 7 siblings, Charles Starkweather was initially a very happy and kind child. He was born with genuverum, a genetic defect that caused his legs to be bowed, and he had a speech impediment. However, it wasn't until his high school years, when he was being bullied for these defects, that he would lose his happy, well-behaved manners and become a sullen and angry teen. Charles excelled in gym class almost exclusively and soon took advantage of his strength to bully others and exert his power over them. By the time Starkweather dropped out of school, his parents were afraid of him and his violent outbursts. Starkweather started dating 13-year-old Carol Ann Fugate and was kicked out of his house after she crashed his dad's car while he taught her to drive. Charles began plotting bank robberies and took on the motto of "dead people are all on the same level." In 57, he would commit his first murder of a gas station clerk who refused to sell him a stuffed animal on credit. Charles went to Carol's home while she was at school, and in retaliation for the disapproval and distaste her parents held for him, he murdered the entire family of 3 before waiting for Carol to get home. Stories diverge here, but Carol was either kidnapped or became a willing accomplice for the next several murders. After the spree, Charles had killed 11 people and 2 family dogs. Starkweather was executed for his crimes, while Carol Ann Fugate was sentenced to life in prison with parole. That concludes our most horrifying teen inmates you'd never want to meet. If you enjoyed, please like and share, and be sure to follow for more.